Welcome all as we congregate to the greatest toy line in community, ever growing, ever changing. As we collect and adapt these figures to our own imaginations and embrace the fun, there's much to learn, especially if you're new to Mythics. Welcome to another episode of New to Mythics. I am honored tonight to have Mr. Eric Treadaway here gracing me and giving some good stories and anecdotes and talking just all the good stuff. I really enjoyed our last conversation that we had, and it went a little bit long, which I was happy with, because you were so enthusiastic about new parts. And that was something like we talked, like after I ended the show, like we talked more about new stuff, not spoilers or nothing, like, he wasn't giving me all the, the stuff, but like you were telling me about, like how excited you are for us to get some of the newer parts. And that was stuff that I wanted to talk about, and that's one of the reasons why I asked you if you would come back, and you graciously said yes. So thank you very much for being here.
Of course, it's my pleasure. I had a great time last time as well. So it's nice to get the new year started and have a nice conversation. And I think after having a that kind of break time over the holidays to really recharge and have time to think a little bit. It's exciting to be at this point in the year where all the possibilities are out in front of us.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a fun time to talk about this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was listening to our friends at Mythic Enablers, and they were talking about like kind of how the year went, like all the different releases in the Mythic world. And a lot of us that do these shows have already, done our top 10s and our top 15s and our top whatever. And it's just fun to talk about, like, all the different, and I think somebody made a slide of all of the releases that your studio had, and I think we're missing the graveyard, and there was one other figure I think that we're missing. But like, this is just a huge list. I mean, amazing figures. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I wonder what Eric thinks about this amazing year, 2025, of all these great releases. So I sent you an email, and I'm like, he can only say no. I'm like, if this is not fun, if it's not something you want to talk about, year in review, then, that's okay. I would not take offense, but thank you so much. So basically, I wanted to talk about you guys' amazing 2025.
Yeah, for sure. And seeing this graphic is, I think my first reaction to seeing this graphic is like, my head and where I'm living at is so much in the development part of it. Like, this was the past year, but like in my head, this is, 2 years ago plus,
right,
was when my mind was occupied with a lot of this, a lot of these figures. So it's I'm almost taken aback a little bit by that. This was what was actually happening in 2025, right, from kind of the other side of the the window.
Right. And you guys, like, I don't know how it is for you guys, like your schedule. I mean, there's Legion's Con, but that's kind of like when you show us what you've been working on. So like, is your year like the same kind of like, January to December, or is it kind of like a different type of like time table? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, it's a good question because there was for years and years it was all about Toy Fair.
Mm-hmm.
When I first got into the industry, the buildup was to February, and that was, when I was at McFarland, the course of the year, was steady, and then when I first, the first year I was there, maybe like in late December, January, the pace picked up because everything's getting ready for the showroom. By the time I left, it started more like in September, and that was the heavy season just because it was more figures.
Mm-hmm.
The displays were more intense, more detail, all of that. And then there was a point where Toy Fair wasn't quite as important, and it all became about San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like during the Mattel years. It was this huge build up to San Diego every year because they would do the big Masters panel, they would do the big DC panel. They'd bring it all out during the panels and put it on display and stuff. And then, that even with Mythic, when we first started, we were still on that San Diego kind of track a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. And then there was a point where we had our Toypocalypse shows where that was, the big culmination of the year. And then for a while that didn't really exist for us. And I used to love those because that was when, like Nate and Iz would come out. Everybody was out for Toy Fair. It was
Right.
like that big, gathering.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, that was, George would come out, anytime we could get George into town, that's a big deal.
Right.
But then there was a point for a while where that, just didn't really exist. We would go to San Diego, but it kind of lost that feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then like once Legions Con started, and especially as each year went on, like I feel like we're back to that, it really is a culmination of everything that we
Right.
do during the year. It's our biggest show. It's the biggest gathering of all of our friends
Right.
and family and fans. And then it's where we, our biggest presentation of new product announcements, progress on existing projects.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, that really is, it works out nicely because it is toward the end of the year. And I mean, essentially you've got Legions Con, and a couple of weeks later you got Thanksgiving, and you're
Right.
full holiday mode.
Right.
So it's just nice. It's nice like to put all the work in, have a lot of fun at Legions Con, and then, decompress a little bit for that end part of the year. And then, everybody's now, we're here at, beginning of January, everybody's fresh and ready to rock on the new year.
Yeah. So you kind of get back onto the projects that you guys have been working on. Right. Because it's not like you don't end, like the projects end when they end. It's not like it stops right at this time. It's kind of like more of an organic thing, right? Like the production and when the project, and then when this ends, then you go on to the next.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about, there used to be a point where it was very much like I would sculpt until it was done, and then we'd throw it out in the world, back in the days pre-Mythic, where we were just doing random releases. There was not a lot of rhyme or reason to it.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas now we're to the point where we, have our full schedule for the year because we're trying to coordinate with shows and, launch specials and making sure things don't overlap and all that. So it's somewhat dictated by when we want to put the sale up.
Mm-hmm.
And at the point where we're at Legions Con, generally, I mean, there's a few things here and there, but generally everything's revealed at that point. If anybody asks, well, what do you have that you're not showing us? It's not much at that
All
point.
the secrets are out, you guys.
Yes. Which it was
everything.
also, again, it's that collective sigh of relief in
Yes.
the studio, because it is, we can talk about what we've been doing. But it is like, and then there's a couple of random projects that happen in that last month and a half. What I'm working on now, once this is done, like I really am at the kind of like that ground zero for the year to like really clean slate and getting into like the, real new stuff.
Yeah. Something you just mentioned about all the things are being revealed. I love that playfulness that you guys have. Like, you are totally transparent, I think, when it comes to shipping releases and where they are in production, but you guys hold back, like, reveals and the, secret, like your wave releases and stuff like that. When did that start coming about? Like, what was the genesis of that? 'Cause I think it's fun. I love the surprises and stuff.
I mean, honestly, for me, I think it goes back to really, I mean, certainly like when I first got into the toy industry, but even before, when I was just a fan looking at, Tomart's Action Figure Digest and Lee's,
Mm-hmm.
and it very much was about Toy Fair. It would be quiet for months and months and months, and then Toy Fair comes around and every company just unleashes all their new product, and it was just such an exciting time of year. And I think, as a young adult collector, that was the closest thing to Christmas morning. Like
I was just about to say that, like the catalogs, remember we would look at the catalogs as kids and, oh, I want that and I want that. And,
yeah,
it's almost the same thing when you get these. I remember like the toy fairs and the, those collector magazines, you turn the page and there would be like a new release. And it's like, whoa, man, I can't wait to get my hands on that.
absolutely.
It just
Yeah.
evokes
And I mean,
those.
it's that excitement factor. And we get, we feed off the energy. It's fun for us to see the reactions. And, of course, sometimes it's a struggle for us because, people also enjoy seeing work in progress and
Right.
behind the scenes and all that. So it is trying to find that balance of, how much do we trickle out? How much do we want people to, kind of at least have some expectation?
Right.
We just had it was a conversation. We released that that screen grab of the RPG elf figure, and that was a discussion. Like, do we want to do this yet, or do we want to wait closer to the Kickstarter? Then, in a way, it's kind of not a wrong answer either way,
right?
But it's a matter of just gives people a taste, gets a little excitement going, but it's not giving away too much
right.
of what we're going to show at that point.
So how much control do you guys have over releases, reveals? Like, is there times where you're like, guys, this year is heavy, or let's hold this maybe for, or are things so structured that you have to, like, keep the machine going? You know what I mean? Like, is there times where you're like, there's too much going on, we're trying to space things? Like, how do you guys maneuver with that? Like,
I mean, we spend a lot of time putting schedules together and really parsing out the projects, but Jeremy always says, we're nimble and we're flexible. We've always been that way, and we've been able to maintain the ability to make moves quickly and move things around to the best of our ability. And I think having that, basically almost like that escape hatch, it always allows us to react to the situation. Yeah, I mean, if it's things are getting too heavy, or if something's moving too slowly, or something that was supposed to have shipped hasn't shipped yet. There are a lot of times where we don't want to put something up for sale unless something else,
Right.
is in people's hands. Like we even last night, Jeremy and I talked about it a little bit. Like we took a break on Cosmic because we felt like it was so important for people to have Ox Crew in people's hands, because it was such a new facet to what Cosmic was all about, that people I really needed to play with those and mix and match those with what existed to kind of get a fuller idea of where Cosmic is, where it's going.
Right.
And so, we where there was going to be a wave, we decided to postpone and take a breather with it, because we want to do right by the line. Like, we love Cosmic, and I think with the thing with Cosmic was Mythic. When Mythic came out, there was only Mythic, and so it had its own trajectory. And Cosmic came out, and that first wave was huge. Like it was, and I think for different reasons for people. I think for some people it's because, I can get in at the ground floor. I don't know. Possibly some people were speculating on it because Mythic, was so hard to find, and so so many figures were so pricey.
Mm-hmm.
It's all over the place.
Right.
But then we realized Cosmic is going to have a different trajectory than Mythic is, because for one, it's already starting off so much higher than where we were when Mythic first started, but also because there's this juggernaut of a line in the background that people are already so committed to.
You're an established company, with a fan base already, so to introduce a subline, it's easier, I would think, because you guys have already, you've got the production thing figured out and the tooling, and you've got a great team already. So what was the birth of Cosmics? How did that come about? And I know we're kind of veering off onto another subject, but I think that's an interesting topic.
It was just something that we wanted to do for a long time. I think from my standpoint, and I would imagine this is for a lot of people, like, your genres in toys and, a lot of just media in general. Like, if you're getting into like the fantasy sci-fi realm, that is what the two big, the pillars are. It's sci-fi, it's fantasy. And then from a toy standpoint, toy wise, you've also got, like, I would say then you maybe throw in robots and military.
Right.
I'm just thinking back to when I grew up.
Yes, me too.
Star Wars, Masters Universe, G.I. Joe, Transformers.
Right.
Of course, there are lots of others, but those
are
in my house, those were, the big ones. And so robots can, kind of fit into sci-fi. They're kind of like intertwined. Military, we're not really looking at. So we already had done fantasy. So the next challenge was let's try to do sci-fi. And it's so different than fantasy, just in look and spirit and approach, that it's that I love it because there's it's the contrast. Like, in one, we're working on rusted armor and fur and swords and shields and all that, and then you move over to Cosmic, and it's this sleek lines and clear domes and just all these elements,
geometrical, smooth. I get that, and that's got to be like almost like a nice contrast or like palette cleanser to go from knights and armor and goblins and ogres to something modern or sleek or different, alien three-eyed slog looking. It's got to be fun for your brain to do something completely different.
Absolutely. Because you're using different parts of your creativity. Because like fantasy, there's like almost like certain more parameters to work within, as far as, people have character types that they're comfortable with, and it's in a way a little more narrow, whereas sci-fi, like almost to me, the more alien and weird you get, the more sci-fi you're getting.
Right.
Now that's not true for everybody. That's the danger of cosmic, right. Is that, if we didn't have to satisfy anybody else, like I would just get stranger and stranger and stranger with this stuff.
More tentacles.
Right. But at a point, like I would be the only one who wanted it.
I don't know. There'd be some people out there, I think, that would, like Eric Miller loves all the, the creatures and monsters and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, there's and that's what we found with cosmic, is that even though the audience is currently smaller for cosmic, the people who like, at least most of what I see, the people who like cosmic love cosmic. Like the people who are into cosmic are really dedicated to it.
Yes.
And again, that's where some people are 300 figures into Mythic. Are you ready to jump into something else that could go as far?
Right.
So
and cosmic is still new. Like it's still, I mean, how many waves are we in so far?
5.
So yeah, I mean,
that is like, yeah, that puts it into perspective.
Absolutely.
I
love that you're doing things like, you've got kind of a wasteland thing. You have kind of like a survivor, on the ships kind of thing. And you have gladiator, like there's different storylines that are going kind of, and I think that keeps it, it's not just, a story of a farm boy that gets swept up and goes, it's there's more to it than that. There's more layers. And I think it gives you probably more to do and more to create and, flex your mind more, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, with cosmic, I feel like, our inspirations and our love for different parts of sci-fi are like really we wear it on our sleeve, with that line. And again, like Mythic, yeah, there's different themes and from wave to wave, but it all feels like within a pretty specific genre, whereas cosmic, like so far I feel like book 1, book 2, like we're really genre hopping, within these waves, and that's what I didn't want any limitations with it. Because the wasteland stuff, I love that. It's cool.
I do too.
But that's a very different, even if we're just using like, touchstone type properties, like, like Star Trek and Mad Max are two very different things.
Yes.
And then, you pull in, I don't know, Alien,
right,
Dune,
right,
just like they're all sci-fi, but they're very different within sci-fi. And I wanted to create a world where all of those things can exist, from the early days of sci-fi to like, the most modern, modern types of looks and themes that are out there.
Yeah, I like that. Like if you think about it, Westworld was sci-fi, but it was a Western.
Right.
So it's like, it's different, turning things on its head and not following any kind of set, guidelines. And I think that's what is great about sci-fi and fantasy, is that, you can have talking dragons, or you can have, anything you could think of. That's, it's so how, and I think I've asked you this before, but how is this story like tied to your creating? You know what I mean? So like, do you and Jeremy, or do you come up with a story first and then you create around that? Or is creations first? Do you want to be like, guys, I want to make an ogre. Let's do a ogre thing. Let's guys, I need some more elves. Like how does the process of like when you start the creation of say a wave, for instance?
It's almost like yes to every example that you gave. It's
And does the story thing help you? Like, does it help you get your in the right mind? Like
it does.
Jeremy's like, let's do a horror, in the snow story, and you're like, ooh, I like that. Let's,
It's a lot of back and forth.
mm-hmm,
It's sometimes it is the inspiration is whatever. If you mentioned horror, yeah, I want to do a
mm-hmm,
werewolf. We want to do a werewolf for years. This is where we're going to do it, and then we know we want to do imp scale,
mm-hmm.
so a gnome is part of that. We're going to do the gnome here, and then you start realizing this would work really well with an Arctic theme, because
Right.
a lot of times, like sometimes it's just a matter of looking at the map and saying, where on the map do we want to
Mm-hmm.
put this? But with like horror at Einzelmall, like that wave in particular, what we knew going into that one was that before we move forward story wise, like to the second big arc of story with Reign of the Beast, we wanted to go backwards. Our whole kind of tagline for that is, before we go forward, we need to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And so we jump back to Reign of the Beast. And we also knew that what would eventually become Dawns of Discovery was going to be the first true wave in the new era. Although Ashes of Agbendor, it was almost like a like a postscript to the first arc. That one was like a little bit of almost like a post credits,
Mm-hmm.
and then so the horror at Einzelmall was going to be like, that was almost the mirror of what Ashes of Agbendor was, where that was kind of like a little tie up of the first arc. This was the little bit of the first peek into the new arc, and that in the story, that little part at the end where they come through the cave and like see the other side, like
Yes.
that was what we needed to accomplish in that wave,
Mm-hmm.
story wise. And then so it came together with the theme, and then the character types we wanted to do, and then it starts bouncing back and forth, because then it's we know we want to do a werewolf, but since the werewolf showed up in this wave, there's things about that werewolf that we hinted at and that apply to what we're doing story wise.
Okay.
um
And so do you think that you're like a cinematic creator? Like you can see like when you're making something, do you see it like as a movie, or like, like these waves are they kind of like mini movies in your brain?
Very much so, except for me, probably more season of television.
Okay.
Like I am more of
That makes sense.
yeah, I'm more of a TV, like like just as a format, I prefer TV over a movie any day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like that kind of serialized series, long
Mm-hmm.
form storytelling. I just like the depth that it can go into. And like, if also, just like, if you love a movie and you get 2 hours of it, I want 10 hours of it.
Thank you. I agree.
And I don't want to wait 3 years for it. So
Yes. Yeah.
but I just love the pacing of it and the rhythm of it.
Mm-hmm.
um and so like I think of things that way, and especially like like cosmic, book one Valkatar. I picture that, like I could pace that out in my mind over however many episodes we would be given, but an 8 episode season, a 6 episode season, 10
Right.
episodes, whatever. I think it would, like, I could just, like, that's when I could I could picture it. And same with Einzelmall, even the way that Jeremy released those, like the chapters,
Right.
like that's what I could, I see it like broken down into seasons. And
Or like Koi and Dawns of Discovery, and
yeah,
the chapters, the cinematic. And I
yes,
love that. And I think us as fans really love that, the story involved with it, because it makes it more than just a toy. It makes it, you know, it's like, oh, I can see it. Like that's what the werewolf looks like. Like it, it gives me a visual that goes with the story. Um, and it's just another layer of fun, I think. So how excited were you when you actually started making this guy? I mean,
Uh,
the
very,
textures.
very. I mean, and if you look at him, I started making him a year plus prior because he's got Leodicius parts.
Hmm.
So I was roughing this out back then. So that was like early 24. When I was working on that, and then um, like focusing on Leodicius, but making sure a wolf head's going to look right on this, or like what's
Hmm.
the neck going to be like on the wolf, to like make this torso work with a full lion's mane, but also work on a wolf head. But I was excited about it because I've had a picture in my head of what this werewolf would look like for years. There's still an image that is yet to happen, just because we don't have the figures yet, but of the way like these guys will be further presented as we go. um, but I mean that plan has been in place for whatever now, like 12 years. Like I
Wow.
knew what that werewolf was gonna be. I mean, we 10 years in, we can make a much better werewolf now than we could all the way back then. So
Hmm.
good for us now that it was put off for so long. um but yeah, it was, it's interestingly enough, like that wave, the imp scale and the wolf were like these long percolating uh you know projects. I've had little prints of these rough imps in my drawer
Really?
for years.
I love that.
They turned, very different than what I was
Right.
initially looking at. But the overall all ideas, it's all, just that scale is what really it's all about. And that held true. The designs of the characters held true, but these are more complex. Originally the thinking was that they would be, um, somewhat simpler than the bigger figures, so that
Hmm.
um, they would be, just quicker to make, probably, possibly cheaper, all that. But then, over the years, you realize like that's, rather than trying to just make a cheaper figure because it's small, make a small figure that we make as best we can and put other stuff in with it
Yeah.
to make the price the make sense for folks.
And I love that you guys are like adding more, or you're doing more like accessory sets, like the cosmic one, like like this one here, the one the tavern set. What was your reason for that? Like why now after all these years? Like what was your thought on that?
I mean, partially just the ability to
Just to
do
be able
it
to do it?
and
Yeah.
cost it in. And that first pack that we did with Ox Crew, was
Hmm.
kind of, that was an experiment. It's organically happened a little bit with what we've been including with Figura
Right.
over the years. And really, I think what ultimately facilitates all of it is just that people like it, and
Hmm.
and want it, and are willing to support it. Um, because I, like, of course, yeah, doing these props and uh, I mean, I don't know how long, like, I wanted to do a treasure chest. Like
Hmm.
that's just such, like, it's such a pure fantasy prop. Like, it's,
Right.
I mean, it's just screams what this line's about. Um,
Yes.
but just now we know that it's something that people value enough that it makes it worth it
Right.
for us to make. Like it's not just seen as a a throwaway item. And a part of it is the world of collectors that exists now. Like that's a valuable tool in a diorama. It's a valuable
Yes.
tool in a photo shoot, and it's fun to play with and just have as an accessory. So, yeah, I mean, it's just knowing that we can. Because I want to, I want to do everything. Like, I want to build this world out as much as we can. So, it's kind of seeing what we can get away with, and not destroy ourselves in the process.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's fun that you add it, as like the set with Dawns of Discovery, the with the jaws and the different, things. I think that that's cool that you give us the option to be able to. I love that you guys are receptive to the creativity within the community. Like that's something I talked to Cornboy about, because I think he was saying like when you guys first maybe started seeing people make stuff, for your toys, it's like, whoa, is this, should we allow this? Like, what is, but I feel like you kind of embrace that creativity and you like to see it. Like you and Jeremy will walk through like Legion's Con and see like people's tables and what they've created. Like, what is your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you would have told me before we ever started this that was going to be such a part of the line, like I couldn't picture it. It's and yeah, I mean, CB, what he's saying is exactly true. Like there wasn't anything to compare it to,
Right.
And so it's at first, it's almost like is this people who don't like what we did and they're trying to fix it? Is it people who are just into it? Like it was a new thing, because people, all the years that we had been into the toy stuff, like there were customizers out there, but just not with just the passion level and like the intensity level of what started to happen with this. And I think part of it too is like if all that you're doing is sitting in the studio and seeing this stuff on a message board or on whatever Facebook I guess was around at the time, I don't even know, but you're seeing this stuff across
Right.
the screen or remotely or whatever, and maybe we didn't know what to make of it just yet, but as soon as you start going, because there was a point where like we weren't doing as many shows, and then we started doing ToyCon New Jersey was really a big part of us like getting into the show thing and getting into the show thing past just going to San Diego, like going to shows where, because San Diego, the environment, like we met lots of cool people over the years, especially through Masters in DC, like
right.
But there's kind of especially as the years went on, like people were there to buy exclusives. People weren't there as much to chat, to like really dig into what you had at your booth. But then you go to, we go to ToyCon New Jersey and had such a great time there and like really talking to people and engaging. And then that, grew into doing so many other shows now. But the difference was when you're there and somebody comes up to your booth and starts showing you their customs and you realize what this is all about, like then it's like, how can you say no? Like I remember Joe Vassapolo, like he would be at every ToyCon and I would love it. Like he'd come up and just have a box of stuff and start pulling customs out. And, sometimes they would have, a 3D printed head on it. Sometimes it was just paint, but you realize like the excitement behind it, and just like what that interaction becomes like for me to see what somebody took something I did and reimagined it, and sometimes it's just like, wow, like I would have never thought like painting this blue instead of silver
Right.
would like transform it so much. I never would have thought of that. But I mean, it just like then it became an easy transition at that point. It just there's no downside to it. It was only positivity, and positivity on so many different levels.
Right.
Then it was like, why would we stifle this at all?
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't do anything for anybody.
Well, I think it says something about you guys, and that you want to be part of the community, like that you guys are there, engaging with people instead of being, in your towers and your skyscrapers and your, far away, whatever. Like, you guys are with the people, and you get feedback, and you hear stories of, oh, this was my first figure. And you know what I mean? You guys, the engagement, it makes it more special. I had a friend that was telling me about, my friend Jay was talking about Legos, and in a way he was kind of comparing Legions to Legos, in that it's like limitless possibilities, like give someone a Silver Knight, and like, what can they make with this? Or a swig, like, what all can we make? You see the 1,000 swigs. Everyone's imagination is different, and what they make with your amazing creation is awe-inspiring. The stuff that people make just off of your imagination is, I love it. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, I mean I mean, really just so much of what this whole experience with this line and what we're doing now, and it's so rewarding. It's it's working on many levels.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot. It's just it's a lot of fun. It's rewarding. Made so many good friends through all of this.
Absolutely.
Had so many opportunities, so many experiences. Yeah, I mean it's really, yeah, it's again, like I like it's because we've talked about it before. Like we couldn't have plotted this adventure
right
for ourselves. Because again, like we're in a place that when I got into the toy industry, it didn't exist. Like, it's hard to think back almost to that point. But, when at the time when I first came to the first toy fair and Todd was showing off the first Spawn stuff, like the industry was about to be rocked.
Yes.
Like, it was the same. I mean, this was back at the time when you would go into Toys R Us, and you would have Ninja Batman and flamethrower Batman and this Batman and that Batman and Batman and Batman and Batman, and then you're lucky if you get like a Joker in the wave. And it's just it was this really,
give me a Man Bat or something,
for sure. I mean, for me that's absolutely. But it was like a very stagnant. There was a lot of certainly a lot of cool stuff coming out because I was buying a lot, but there was an old school way of thinking, and around that like mid 90s, even early 90s a little bit, but really mid 90s, like things that started to change. And like, because I remember in the days like when I was in college, and just unmercifully hitting Toys R Us and Target like multiple times a week. I was in a store for kids' toys. Like, it was like the collector thing wasn't, it was really, starting to take shape at that point.
Right.
And then by the end of that decade, you had, Mattel, Hasbro, these giant companies beginning to take notice. I wouldn't say quite catering just yet, a little bit, certainly entertaining the collectors. But it was the beginning of such a shift in the industry and like the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, but back then though, the idea of like a convention that wrapped around an independent toy line with an entire room of people creating based off of that and bringing their own creations, like I, you couldn't predict that.
No,
You
no,
couldn't.
absolutely not. Yeah, I remember just as talking on this show to fans of, in our age, our time, that there was like a dry spell. Like we wanted toys, but there was nothing really that would satisfy us as growing older, from the Transformer time and the GI Joe time and Thundercats and whatever. Like I would go, like you said, I would go to Target and Toys R Us, but there was nothing really there for me. And then I remember seeing like Redeemer or like, Spawn with a machine gun, and I was just like, whoa, the spikes and like the Max figure, and I was just like, whoa, like this is stuff for older people like me. Like, this is not, like you said, flamethrower Batman. This was like something that was like not belittling us. This was like cool stuff that like, would look good on a teenager or 20-year-old or 22-year-old shelf. And
Yeah.
That was an awesome time, and you guys were part of that. Like that was an awesome time. And that was like, I think, the beginning, of us as becoming like, if you guys weren't part of that, if McFarlane didn't like make that stuff, like would we collect now? Like would we still, because I think that was like the time, like we were looking for something. I saw that Akira Kaneda's red motorcycle that McFarlane did, and I'm like, hearts in my eyes. I'm like, this is what I want. I still have one. It's over here. I think I paid $100 for it. But like what an amazing time.
It really was. Like, I mean, it was, and it was like, for me, it was crazy because when I started at McFarlane, I was 21. Like, I was a kid still.
Mhm.
And I had really gotten, I gotten out of toys. I got back into toys in college. So probably by the time I got in, I might have been 19
Mhm.
getting back into it. So I was only a couple years into, heavily into comics at the time. So, I was a big fan of Image and McFarlane. And,
Mhm.
it was exciting, like the idea of what they were doing. Um, and then, being so new to the toy collecting world, and then all of a sudden caught up in this whirlwind of being in it, and then watching the industry catch up or like take notice, and all of a sudden Playmates was doing Wildcats, and
Right.
Playmates had Savage Dragon at one
Mhm.
point, and but even things that weren't the superhero stuff started to, you started to see more paint, more dynamic posing,
Right.
more articulation in some cases. Um, and it was, it was great for action figures. Um,
Revitalized, I think, totally.
yeah,
The detail, and I mean, I think about that Max figure. I wish I still had it. But just the detail and the paint, yeah, you couldn't put it in a Spider-Man pose or anything, but like that's not what the character was.
right.
Just the detail and the chunkiness to it. But it really appealed to me as a collector because it was more sophisticated, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, it is one of these, um, just like, a number of factors fell into place because it was, you think about from the at least the Todd perspective part of it, he was the biggest comic creator in the world at the time. Spider-Man selling millions of
Right.
units, leaves to do his own thing. He's rich. He's got money
Right.
to do whatever he wants, and he goes to Hasbro, goes to Mattel. Doesn't get, they're just not showing him what he wants, and then he's just like, all right, I'll start my own thing. Like, when else is that going to happen? Where else is that going to happen? It just happened to be that those series of events and circumstances line up. So I mean, I would have to imagine like things would progress eventually, but that was the kick in the pants that got it going. It might have taken another 10 years.
Right.
And it's I don't know that there's ever been such a dynamic shift since. It feels like it's been a more steady stream of innovation and improvements. One could argue Marvel Legends Series 1, like the advancements in articulation and things like that. There's certainly been events over the years and lines that have propelled things forward, but I feel like if you look at figures from the 70s through the at least early 90s, the amount of progression there compared to the amount of progression that started in like that mid 90s, and just how quickly it moved. It was like what took 15 years, 20 years took 2 years. And that's not to say that I don't love my toys from the 70s and 80s.
I do too.
So I mean, there's something nice about the simplicity of a lot of that. But it was a cool time to be into this stuff for sure.
Yeah. So like when you guys started to do your own thing with Mythics, like how important was like articulation, especially considering like the time that we grew up in? Like, were you kind of not really sure, like you don't want to lose like your creativity for articulation? Like what kind of how did that come about with your figures for like the Kickstarter and stuff?
It's about the balance, the balance between the aesthetics and the functionality. In the case of Mythic, it's the balance between the amount of movement on the figure and the ability to rip them apart and put them back together without them getting too floppy or the more pieces you put in the figure, the more opportunities for something to go wrong or something to fall apart or get loose or whatever. I mean, it's just personal taste. I think it was just, obviously Mythic has been, and Cosmic has been criticized, by certain people about, some people want hyper articulation and double knees and double elbows. Now we have some of that. But I never wanted to just put that stuff in for the sake of putting it in. And, we were developing Mythic, we had done some in-house figures that had more articulation. But again, it was about like, I want to be able to just take that arm and just pop it off of there. And also for it to look good. So, it was a mix of factors.
So the modular was something that you guys have always wanted to do with your line.
Oh yeah, because it was, we really, well, for one thing, for years with masters and things like that, we were doing development wise, shared parts, and we realized that
Mm-hmm.
like what you could, we learned what we could do with shared parts. And then when we did Outer Spacemen and Power Lords and started working with Matt and the Glyos system, started to really enjoy and see the value of taking those interchangeabilities and those like that parts reuse and putting it into the hands of the person playing with it, and giving that kind of power to create, take figure one and figure two and switch the heads and the arms and create figure three. Um, and then so when we got back to Mythic, it was like, well, let's do a figure like what, the type of figure that we're known for, that we like it as a, in the world of 6-inch figures, but kind of take that Glyos mentality, all those things that we've learned and love, and put it into a single figure line.
Do you think that modularity like is one of the reasons for the success of Mythics?
Unquestionably,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's at the time we released it, I think it was certainly part of the success. As the line has gone on, I think it's just become so much more integral and important. Early on it was a Kickstarter, and we could tell people you can mix and match, but until they got it in their hands, like, you don't really understand it.
That's
and then
true.
Until you're 5 waves in, whenever we get to Advent of Decay and add new parts in and all that, it takes some time to like really see the potential. But yeah, I mean, I keep going back to Legion's Con and that room full of people at those tables. That wouldn't exist if there. I don't think if that
right.
that interchangeable component was there. I mean, or it might be 5 tables of people doing heads, or
right.
weapons, but
right, swords and
it's become just so much of the DNA of the line. It was always there, but it's it was part of the line. Fan base reacted to that and took it somewhere. We see how the fan base digests what we put out and what they put back out there, and then we react to that. When we introduced in the Alithia wave the poppable chest plates on the torsos, like I knew when we were doing that, this is something new. This is something that people are gonna start doing this now. Like, we're creating a new, almost like a product category, and there's so many times where I'm adding, if I do a lower leg and it's got a plate on it that comes off, well, there you go. That's somebody's going to be the leg plate person, moving forward. But that's more reason to do it. Like, that's like, that could just be glued on, and that right. leg that you get is that version. But if we can make it so it pops, then there's just, there's more of a life to that new piece that goes on and on and on, as opposed to being a dead end.
Right. And maybe it's something for you too, like, to have all of these different, like, whenever we're talking about you and you're creating, it's like, oh, Eric has more tools now for his toy box. Like, he's got more parts that he can make something even more amazing. So it's got to be, good for you too, the modularity, to be able to, like, okay, I've got these barbarian boots now, so I can put them on this, or I've got these knees now, so I can put them, you know what I mean? So it's got to be like satisfying for you also to get the new parts, so that you can create more.
Oh, completely. And like that chest, like that, and even like that chest plate, for example, like that, like, I like that too for me, because then it's like, if I want to make a new, aesthetically a new torso,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cases I can just take my base chest plate and then start with that. And we don't have to tool up an entire torso. We can get the look of a new torso, but with that, that works in our favor from a tooling standpoint, from a development standpoint. And so there's just the flat out getting new pieces to put in my
Mm-hmm.
arsenal, but then there's also things like that makes it, like, by having that torso without the chest plate, that's half of the next project already done.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I love it. I love the more that we, the more that we develop, the more that we just have at our disposal. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
the Ganesha, that's on the back of the screen there. Like, we put the rat with Ganesha. Like, how many times have we used the rat already? Like, how
Right.
cool is it to have a tool of like a little rat, or
Yeah.
like a bowl of fruit, or
Right.
like, it's great, because when the time comes up that it's having, any of those items, I don't know. It's, you mentioned Lego earlier. It's almost like, having Lego. Like, if you want to make your scene with a kitchen table, and you've got your apples and you got your bananas
Right.
and whatever, then you're just pulling your tools out of the toolbox and putting them on the table. And that's more and more what, as we go along, it's, it's like that for us. Even
Mm-hmm.
a good example is in Dawn's, like, the fact, like, I was able to use Krampus's basket again, like,
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
and it
I was
worked
just
so
looking at my Krampus.
yeah, worked so perfectly. And that was like, when I made that, I was like, this is going to be for Krampus. I honestly, I hadn't even considered using it again. And then it
Mm-hmm.
just, I needed a basket, the light bulb went off, and, there we go. So yeah, I mean, it's like, because again, for me, like, I talk about this a lot when I talk about digital sculpting over traditional sculpting. Like, as a creator, the thing I'm most interested in is like getting the ideas out and in the world, and tangible in hand. And so if, I already did the work 2 years ago and have a particular accessory or piece of armor or whatever it might be, then I can make that character and make it real that much quicker. And then that means I have the time to make another one, then
Right.
another one. And so it's it's exciting to me from that point, because it's just like an efficiency to it. And it just, just like,
Right.
and we can make
So.
figures and offerings that are more robust. You got,
Mm-hmm.
like, if, this like weird variety of accessories can come with a character like Mobu, that might not be quite as many things in that package if we didn't already have some of that developed over the years.
So so if you have tooling for something, that saves money, for the figure, for whatever other parts you put in there, right?
And money and time,
Yeah.
that's a big one. It's,
Mm-hmm.
if we save the time on sculpting a couple of accessories, or a great, I mean, a really good example is like, if you've got the perfect body already developed, tooled, and whatever, and all you have to do is a new head, but it makes the exact character that we need to create. That's great, because all the time goes into the head. And then a character that needs a full body sculpture, then you can really put the time into that,
Mm-hmm.
and tooling, and all of that. So it just, that's part of the reason, like, the figures are so much more individualized now than they they used to be, is because we can just keep building and building upon the work and investment that we've put in over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense totally. Let's pause it for just.
We collect and adapt these figures to our own imaginations and embrace the fun. There's much to learn, especially if you're new to Mythics.
Hey, welcome back. This is part 2. We were talking parts, and I was like, wait, stop. I love talking parts, and I love talking like the history of the horse